7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be given by the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC. Please rise.
Hold guard and attention. Carry colors. Forward march. Post colors. Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, arms, ready, face, guide out.
Thank you to the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC. Item 3 is the roll call. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Echeverry.
Here.
Treasurer LaFata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here. Trustee Vosberg
Is request an excuse for Trustee Vosberg. Item support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 4, presentations. No scheduled presentations. Item number 5, department reports.
Just a quick update from the Public Safety Department. Last week we had a sort of a major event at one of our residential senior living complexes. We had multiple fire departments respond to what turned out to be a small fire. We had local communities supply additional fire resources to us, along with MedStar EMS. Richmond Lennox EMS and their smart connector bus system. We evacuated 68 residents from this facility. They were displaced for about 48 hours and transported to other local facilities, Presbyterian Village, and they accommodated the senior citizens for a period of time until we could quickly get them back in. Also, our building department was also assisted us in returning this building back to use, and the residents were quickly returned. Thank you.
Chief, I just hit Mr. Supervisor, if I may. You said that the residents were out of the building for 48 hours, but it was a small fire. What was the reason they were displaced for 2 days?
The sprinkler system was activated and it, a lot of water damage.
Water as opposed to any
Correct.
smoke or fire?
That is
Got it.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Good evening, Board. Just an update on the Phragmites. As of the last board meeting, when you guys approved the spraying, Tri-County Aquatics, while they weren't guaranteed, they weren't sure how the vote was going to pan out. They were also looking for work in the meantime in case the vote did not go in their favor. And he ended up finding work that was at a better cost for him, so he ended up turning down the spraying of the Salt River, the second phase. So I've been in contact with the DNR, and so what they said the next option would be is to get other companies, try to get on the horn, get other companies to see if they could squeeze us in. I got a couple of companies getting bids, and that bid process ends tomorrow at 10 a.m. And at that point, I will have a vendor who will be able to spray the Salt River. The goal will be to spray between now and October 12th, so that'll be before the next board meeting. So I wanted to make you aware that it will not be Tri-County, but a different vendor who will be spraying the Phragmites in the Salt River between now and that meeting. In the meantime, I am trying to make sure that I'm meeting all the guidelines that the DNR requests for the grant, as well as making sure that notices go out to the residents, and making sure all that stuff is being adhered to. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further department reports? Item number 6 is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda are permitted. Tonight's consent agenda include item 6A, the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 17th, 2018, approval of the agenda with addendum, and approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd request the approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item 6A to be at later discussion during the meeting.
So the motion to remove A and put on the regular agenda.
So approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from September 17th.
Support.
Mr. Supervisor, I also have some additional changes to the consent agenda, particularly with regards to tonight's agenda as well. Perhaps I can suggest an amendment and see if there's continued support. The change in the approval of our agenda for this evening, I would ask for the removal of item 8A, or excuse me, the postponement of item 8A until our next regularly scheduled board meeting, and as an addendum, add to set a public hearing for October 15th at 7 p.m. on the application for an industrial development district at parcel ID number 150904100-025 submitted by Shaler Corporation located at 29933 Commerce Boulevard, Chesterfield Township. And as well as the removal of item 12A, the closed session.
Will the motion maker amend?
Continued support.
Just a point of clarification. That was your motion. I'll continue to support. We're removing 8A. Would we also then remove the corresponding 7A, which is the public hearing?
No, I would ask that the public hearing remain as that was published and posted, so to maintain the public hearing but actually not take action on the item until the following board meeting.
Okay. Continued support.
Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Joseph to approve the consent agenda as stated. And that will pull out item 6A with the other additions and deletions. Discussion from the public?
Joe Kadich, live on Sutton. Is this thing working? Camera rolling, I hope. I didn't hear anything about the fact that the video was destroyed or misused.
Is this on all we're discussing right now is the consent agenda, which are the two items, the agenda now and the payment of bills.
This has to do with the minutes.
Okay, that's going to be, so I'll take an action on that, and then we're going to discuss item 6A separately, which is the minutes.
Okay.
Any public discussion on item 6B and 6C? Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. Item 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 17th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 17th, 2018.
Support. Discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Anderson.
Okay. On September 17th, the board approved by a 4-3 vote the agenda item that included the second application of the herbicide glyphosate on the Salt River Phragmites. Those members that would eventually support the action included references from a University of Maryland report that minimalized concerns about this herbicide in question, as well as other rationales in supporting their position. The 3 dissenting board members, as well as several residents in attendance, expressed their concerns about the possible carcinogenic properties of glyphosate, its potential health risk, as well as the adverse effect it might have on beneficial plants such as willows, river trees, birches, etc. It's my understanding there have been inquiries as to why the video of September 17th meeting was neither online or visible on cable. Although a township employee was on the payroll, as is the practice, ensuring that the meeting was electronically recorded, I was told that except for a few minutes, no audio or video copy existed. The recently adopted board rules and procedures, section 6, recording of meetings, paragraph 6.2, and I quote, "The clerk, however, shall be responsible for audio or visual recordings of each entire meeting of the board, and each such recording shall be maintained in the office of the clerk on such time as the minutes of that particular meeting are approved by the township board. The clerk shall retain all audio and or video recordings of the board meeting for 1 year," end of quote. Despite the considerable dialogue, both pro and con, on the topic at hand, only 2 nondescript paragraphs reflect the board's actions of that meeting of September 17th, 2018, regular agenda 7, item 1. I'm going to deviate from my other remarks I was going to say here, but if there's FOIA requests as to what happened at that meeting, the public will be able to FOIA a couple little sentences that are available in your packet to read that does not talk to the spirit of that night's debate, either for or against this process. The concerns that certain members of this board had about this process or the support of it. I think in the future, Mr. Supervisor, perhaps you have somebody on your staff will ensure with the clerk's office that this recording equipment is working, either audio or video, prior to the time of the meeting. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Joseph.
Yes, without rehashing the concerns Mr. Anderson raised, they echo my own. We spent 4 hours here 2 weeks ago. We had considerable debate. We had a lot of valuable input from residents. It was not just the Phragmites. We had issues involving our township policies. We had a presentation of sorts. There was, the recap in the minutes. One sentence that the presentation regarding the fire department was postponed. But there was considerable discussion there. It was a fairly significant change. We had firefighters in attendance, and a lot of very good things were happening, which were shared. Public doesn't get to see that. Public doesn't get to see the debate. There was some very heated discussions and some very eye-opening things that the township residents who cannot make the meeting look forward to seeing. And I received calls, Trustee Anderson, and I know Treasurer LaFata, I'm sure you did as well, wanting to know why they were not able to participate and watch their township government. We have historically prided ourselves on transparency, yet the ability for residents to see what's going on by way of video is taken from them. It seems that we're successful in recording closed session meetings. We've done that well. But we can't record regular township meetings. And I'm going to save this for my comments section, as I don't think they're appropriate in the discussion regarding the minutes. But I think we would do well to focus on our jobs. And for the clerk, this is clearly an APO that, Mr. Supervisor, I know you're very proud of, and talked about all these wonderful APOs. The responsibilities for the recording rest with the clerk. Not only did it not happen, there's no ability to follow up with the clerk. She's not here. Not in her office in the morning, not in their office in the afternoon. Residents are calling individual board members. This is a dereliction of duty. It's frustrating. And I don't know what needs to be done, but I think a corrective action of sorts should be offered to the residents to assure them that we have a plan in place to, record our meetings. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Well, it's unfortunate that we had the situation occur last week, although it doesn't surprise me. And the reason it doesn't surprise me is because, as those of you who are on the board last term will remember, twice I brought this in front of the board, recognizing that we had some issues with our existing equipment, that I had concerns about our IT support and the ability for them to support this particular function, as well as some challenges with regards to staffing and appropriate staffing and so forth. So although not a surprise, disappointing, I will be bringing forward to the board again another solution that somewhat will be revisited. I'll be revisiting some of our options from 3 years ago, from 2015 that we talked about, as well as some new options that are now available to us now that we have the proper infrastructure, which we did not have prior. We had limited options then, we have a few more now, and I'll be bringing that forward to the board. I was made aware that the video recording did not take in its entirety very shortly after the meeting, in the morning after. And as a result of that, we had two electronics companies come in to take a look at our equipment. We did not know at that time if it was human error or if it was equipment-based. Based on their assessment, it was determined that it was in all likelihood human error. And we have addressed that. Some of the protocols that we have taken on ourselves to ensure that that doesn't happen. One, as I stated, we are going to be bringing forward to the board in the next couple of meetings a couple of options on how to address this long term. But in the short term, what we have done is we have tested and recorded, and I have a disc with me that shows a successful testing of that equipment this afternoon. So we should not have any issues. I don't anticipate any. I can tell you that as of the last 3 or 4 hours, that equipment was functional and was operational, and we shouldn't have an issue. As far as its relation to the minutes, however, the video was simply supplemental to the minutes. They are not part of the minutes. We do sometimes take a look at the video if there's any ambiguity in the minutes as we develop them. However, the minutes that you have in front of you tonight are very typical and standard in their format for what the minutes have always been. And I would recommend that to the board that if there are any corrections that need to be made to those minutes, that's why we bring them forward to be approved at the next board meeting, because if there are corrections to be made to the minutes, that this is the time for us to make those changes, and then we will record those changes accordingly. So as far as the minutes are concerned, and that's the item that we're talking about here, the minutes in fact the record are the minutes that you have in front of you in your board packet.
Treasurer LaFata.
Back to these APOs, they're put out there. There's responsibilities for certain people, and it seems like if an APO isn't followed correctly, there is no consequences. In the private sector, if there's a failure, and it's happened more than once, I think my 4th or 5th board meeting when I was in office, about 3 times the microphones failed. They had to change the batteries in them. It seemed like it's persistent that something fails. In the private sector, you put a corrective action in place or you get fired. Most of the meeting rooms have checkoff sheets. I produced one today, but most of the time people check meeting rooms prior to make sure the video equipment works, the sound system works, the lighting's good, the heating, air conditioning is what it should be, the furniture's in the right place, there's grease boards, video equipment, anything that's needed. It's all checked out prior, and there's a checkoff sheet and somebody's responsible. We have APOs. There's supposed to be responsibility, but there is no responsibility because when they're not followed, there's no consequences. So I don't understand this system. It's kind of mind-boggling for me.
Any further comments from the public?
Yes,
I'm going to folks who haven't spoken yet. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, you turn on Channel 6, those of you that live in the Anchor Bay School District, and you have an opportunity at times to see probably the same meeting over and over and over. Quite often they questionable they aren't updated, and maybe they are. But there was an opportunity to go online to the townships, go online, and you could see these meetings. up to fairly recently. And all of a sudden, for one meeting in its entirety to be wiped out as important as that meeting was, the content Mr. Joseph's talked about, the points we talked about, without rehashing that, is out there somewheres, nowheres. We're looking at, as I said earlier, if you FOIA, somebody FOIAs a township about the September meeting, what are they going to get? 2 little paragraphs. It doesn't explain anything. And that should be avoided. Even with this archaic 2 tin cans and a string type of equipment that we allegedly have, it is still capable of being viewed online. And there should be provisions before these meetings that this equipment is working. I can recall a predecessor deputy clerk who was here during our first term, and my heart went out to the person. During public comments, the batteries were dead in the mic. And the deputy clerk says, "Oh my gosh, it's gonna be a rough day tomorrow. I'm gonna catch it from the supervisor." I mean, now it just seems like we're on automatic pilot. We got a tremendous FOIA coordinator that's on the payroll, a good person. And you call for a FOIA request on that meeting, you're gonna get 2 paragraphs. Anyhow, I'll let it go right there. Thank you.
Going back around for round 2, Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. If I understood the clerk's explanation right, it was the result of an inability to purchase equipment from 3 years ago. And when we had experts come in and check the equipment, we found that it was more likely human error. So it's a half-baked excuse, and it is, of course, a poor craftsman that blames poor workmanship on their tools. But I would argue, Mr. Supervisor, that the tools do not fall into the responsibility of the clerk. The tools belong to the supervisor. So if the equipment is not satisfactory, we have these wonderful APOs that are very, very aesthetically pleasing, but they're not accomplishing anything because it is the equipment. If it is to be believed that it is the equipment that failed us, then we need a bid process. We have this purchasing policy. We need a bid process we need to see, because we have audience members who are on that board in attendance tonight, and I can assure you that the half-baked, over-budget, overinflated IT equipment that was proposed didn't accomplish a thing, and it cost us a lot of money. And there was no proper vetting of that system, and that's not a function of the clerk's office. And I think as we develop these APOs and we start to pare down who's accountable for what, if we all stay in our lane and we have a clerk that is focusing on Article 6.2 of our administrative procedure, and perhaps not torn duties with enrichment series and concerts in the park and so forth, that we might have batteries in the microphone. 2 weeks ago, I brought to your attention the very contentious planning meeting. The planning meeting resulted in individual commissioners putting their phones on to try to capture a case that we knew was headed to circuit court. When we raised that, the clerk said, "Well, that's not my responsibility. The planning commission appoints somebody to record those," and so forth. So it's never, there's never a mechanism to do what a municipality this size should do, and that's exactly what Mr. LaFata talked about. The room should be prepared. There should be a checklist, and all of the things that we would anticipate encountering, whether it's equipment, lighting, temperature, furniture, batteries, microphones, there should be a checklist. When it happens over and over and over again, and the only thing that you hear in terms of a response is, "Oh, hey, if you would have approved this multi-million dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars of IT equipment, you wouldn't have this problem, but I'll bring it back again." Don't bring back what you brought before. Let's take advantage of our purchasing policy and examine our equipment and get an idea of what that costs. And when we make mistakes, be accountable for it. Let's be in our offices and be prepared to explain it. When you're gone for weeks on end, it's no good.
Any further board comments? Round 2, Clerk Berry.
Well, I don't know quite exactly what Trustee Joseph's talking about there, but, it's as far as the issue that you have with your equipment, with the recording of our meetings, is very, very simple. We have outdated equipment. That is sometimes an issue. I think that was the issue during the Planning Commission meeting. However, I was just told that that's not my responsibility. It is or it isn't. It just depends on who wants it to be at any given time. However, I'd be more than happy to take responsibility for it, and we have. And again, we did bring a solution to the board several years ago. They just chose to go in another direction. I will be more than happy to assist the supervisor and supply him with all of the information that I have and that I have gathered over the years on this item, as I've attempted to rectify some of the issues that we identified and have been aware of. As far as what happened, again, at the last board meeting, I can very exactly tell you what happened based on the analysis by the electronics firms that came out and took a look at the equipment. In that case, it was not an equipment failure, although we could not determine that until they did an assessment. It was determined that it was human error. It was fully tested prior to the meeting. We tested it again and recorded the test today. And the fact that it was working 10 minutes before the meeting and it wasn't working 10 minutes into the meeting, again, we have identified what had occurred there. It was a plug in the back of the particular equipment, and it was pulled forward, I don't believe it was unknowingly, by the individual operating the equipment, and it disconnected. That is what the determination was by the experts that we had take a look at it. So those things happen. We make every effort and do all of our due diligence to ensure that those things don't happen, but technical failures occur. Technical failures occur with professional broadcasting companies. So the fact that we are in a municipality with, again, we have equipment challenges, we have staffing challenges, all these things that we knew about and we have attempted to fix. Mr. Supervisor, I'd be more than happy to assist you and provide you with all the information that we have, but we are taking every step possible that we can think of in order to prevent that from happening, and I'd be happy to share the test video with anyone who wants to see it, to show them how we test equipment before every meeting. So we take all the steps we can possibly take within our power to do that, and we will continue to do that. And it, again, it's again, to whatever extent that we had responsibility, we certainly apologize to the public and apologize to the board for not having that. But we look forward to the board expeditiously addressing the issue when it comes before them. With regards to the FOIA requests are satisfied based on the information that you have. So if it were to be FOIA'd, we would turn over all that we have, including the minutes as well as any video and audio that we do have. So it's not a matter of what you don't have. FOIA addresses what you do have, and so the record would be provided as requested.
Any further comments for round two? I'm going to move up to the public.
Well, basically, I was going to go through the same thing everybody's been discussing, but the other end of this, at the end of that procedure, it says the tape should be kept for at least a year, and then longer if it feared that there's some legitimate claims that may be made down the road. You don't have that, and you don't have the opportunity for people that want to make a claim against this to look at that video. You don't capture that on your minutes. None of that's captured on your minutes. So you're exposed here. And the people that may want to do that are left in a lurch. But beyond that, one of the things I wanted to bring out is it's been 2 years, year and a half that we talked about getting live streaming or podcasting. I don't know how many different excuses I've heard that why it can't be done. Prior to this, it was we don't have an IT department. Going out the meeting last time, which was the 17th, I asked you again, and you said they don't want it. Now, I presume they means the board. Is the board aware that this was a possibility and it should have been done to live stream the meetings instead of just recording them? Nobody wants to answer?
Well, we can't really
Not a
keep give and take.
back and forth at this point, sir.
Okay.
Ask your questions, and
Anyway.
I'll bring it back up with the board.
This brings this thing whole back to light. You know, 2 years, year and a half ago, had this been accomplished, you wouldn't have this problem. If you had a problem streaming out, you'd hear about it from the residents because they couldn't pick it up on either their TV or their computer, and there wouldn't be a problem then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public on item 6A, which is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 17th, 2018?
Hi, Board. Jay Sabo.
Your name and address, just for the record.
Jay Sabo, 52043 Sycamore Drive. Thank you. I just have a question for the clerk to clarify what exactly happened. It was the table that the recorder was on was moved during a recording? The table had to be moved and the plug was pulled from the cable?
Wait, ask your question. I'll bring it back up to the board for her to respond.
That was my question.
Okay. Any further comments from the public?
Mary Sabo, same address. Doesn't surprise me at all that the tape was corrupt or something was corrupt. I predicted it would disappear because of the way the meeting went down last time. Maybe it's time for Clerk Berry to get off her porch and back into the office more often. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Let's bring it back up to the board. Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. What actually happened is the equipment is housed in the case that you see there. The individual who was operating the equipment, after the first several minutes, she was trying to adjust the equipment inside the cabinet, and when she did that, it dislodged the connection, the plug that's in the back of it, to the recorder at the other end. That is what the electronics experts found when they came in. So they believe that all the equipment and components tested okay, but they found that disconnected plug in the back. So what we have asked to do is we have asked for a locking plug on the back of that so that that can't happen again.
Any further comments from the board?
Last one, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Joseph.
The explanation, the very unusual move to pull the minutes from the consent agenda to ask a question. We were told about 3 years ago a plan for equipment. The reality is it's a simple plug that came out. So I don't know why we're spending all this time. I do know it's the employee's fault, it's the equipment's fault, and so forth. That's frustrating to hear because the leader takes responsibility, and you should. That's what the APO says. They don't, they won't, and they're not going to be here in the morning to talk to you about it. Secondly, and last comment from me on the consent agenda minutes, I have a phone, I have a tripod. I'll put it right there on that first chair, I'll point it at the board, I'll just crudely hit play, I'll take my seat when the meeting's over, I'll hit stop, I'll upload that to Facebook, and people can see the minutes from the meeting that way. That might be your best shot.
Any further comments from the board?
And we would be willing to do that as well, if that's what the board decides. With regards to the live streaming, let me just ask that question. I brought this to a couple of board members over the time when we first had the capability to do it. We do have the capability to live stream directly to our website. We can do that at any time the board decides to do that. However, when it was brought to several board members, I was told that they did not desire to do that, so therefore we did not move forward with that. However, if the board's desire changes and you would like to have it live streamed, we can certainly start doing that as of the next meeting, but that would have to be a board call.
Treasurer LaFato.
Live streaming, I don't see an issue with. The part of the live streaming that I was explained was the fact that there was going to be phone calls that would have to be answered and everything else. The live streaming itself, getting this board meeting out to the public, I don't see an issue. What might be cumbersome is trying to answer any incoming phone calls if that was going to be entertained. But I understand we can live stream without having interruptions from residents calling in. And I don't see a problem with live streaming this out to the residents.
Any further comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr.
Trustee
Anderson,
Anderson, go.
Yeah, we're going down memory lane here to the previous board. A couple of us here, 3 of us here were on that board, 4 of us. There's someone in the audience that was on that board. And I know there's discussion about these, putting these meetings on the airwaves. At the time, I believe there was nothing on Channel 6 or it's the comparable Comcast facility in the Lance Cruise District. And yeah, there was talk about this live streaming, updating stuff, and the clerk did some research on it and did reports back, and days ran into weeks, ran into months, and finally the former supervisor said, hey, who's a contact person over Anchor Bay, the finance person? I provided the name. He cut a $4,500 a matching fee with Anchor Bay, and at least we got these meetings back on Channel 6 for the Anchor Bay residents. The talk I'm hearing tonight about live streaming, whatever it is, let's make sure this stuff works. Did it even work before the September meeting? Was it busted before? Did somebody know about it? Nothing was done. That was a hot meeting. This should never happen. We can go on here, it's becoming a long meeting. We can go up here with alibi back and forth, just like some kind of crazy tennis meeting, and that's not what this is. Make sure this machinery, archaic as it may be, is functional, and sometime during a week here, we'll get our email. We can go to the township site and see all our smiling faces, and that'll be that. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Motion by Supervisor Iacovetti, support, second by Clerk Berry, for approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 17th, 2018. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Iacovetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Motion prevails. Item 7, the public hearings. 7A, to hear a public hearing to hear the comments on an application for an industrial facilities exemption certificate for real property submitted by Schaller Corporation located at 29933 Commerce Boulevard, Chesterfield Township, Michigan. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Iacovetti, support by Trustee Demink to open the public hearing. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Iacovetti.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. The public hearing is open at 7:38 p.m. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak on this issue, please come up to the podium and state your concerns. If you could state your name for the record.
Good evening, Chesterfield Township Board. I'm Camille Silva from Macomb County.
Camille, can you hit it, give it a little tap? Okay, perfect. Maybe a little closer.
Pull it down
Yep.
a little more.
There you go.
More?
Yeah, that way we can hear you better. Thank
I'm
you.
on my tiptoes.
No, that's okay. Pull the mic down. Pull the mic down, please. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Camille Silva from Macomb County Planning and Economic Development Department, and Schaller Corporation has been a wonderful client and a wonderful corporate citizen in Chesterfield Township for many years. As their business grows, they continue to expand, and right now they're looking at a 58,000 square foot building in North Bay Park on Commerce Boulevard. They're estimating a new job creation of 30 people. They have an existing 49 people at the site. And if you have questions, Scott Mullica is here to answer them specifically about the project. Okay.
You guys still have the plan on structural, the 2 on Gratiot, and the 1 on Chesterfield Road, correct?
Correct, yeah.
This will be your 5th plan?
Correct, yep.
Any comments from the public?
I had a comment, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Joseph.
The presentation tonight, so normally we have a public hearing, and when we have a public hearing, we're able to go immediately to an approval for an exemption if that's the board prerogative. Why are we unable to do that in this case tonight? No, that's to you, Mr. Chairman.
The county, 5 minutes before this meeting, was in contact, at least this is when I got the information, was in contact with the state of Michigan, and Camille, you might be better off filling in the details here. Approximately 7:45 or 6:45-ish, it was brought to my attention that another public hearing relating to creating the district should have been on this agenda. Internally, with our assessor and our clerk's office, the direction we had was the district was already created. Conversations, I believe, that you had with the state required, to cover, we might have to recreate that district because there was a combination of parcel ID numbers, and Carmel might be able to expand on that.
Well, really, you've done a wonderful analysis. That is exactly what happened. When we have anything unusual, I'm in contact with the State Tax Commission and the Department of Treasury. And in this case, because we've been working with Schaller for quite a while, And Scott explained that there needed to be a lot combination. We followed that, and so we did not initially bring the application forward because we knew, based on a changing tax parcel identification number, that we would have to create a new industrial development district. We were also told that one of the parcels was in the existing district from 1985, but that the other one was not. So when I in fact called one of the staff people, I questioned it, and it is true, the address is the same, but I shared the concern that we want this to go through properly and that we need the industrial development district approved before the industrial facilities exemption certificate can be approved. Thus, I requested that the township consider that tonight.
Can we get some insight? The applicant makes the request, files the paperwork with our township. This is a $4.2 million project. This is a very big development. Lot of potential for employment. We grow, they grow. The application seems to have been made. Where's the breakdown here? Who did we call township-wise to understand what one of the parcels was and was not? I guess what I'm asking you is how did we add additional bureaucracy to this? How did that happen?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it additional bureaucracy, Mr. Joseph. What I would call it is that sometimes things happen. I was explaining to Mr. Accavetti that I have another situation in another township which is much more convoluted than this. That doesn't excuse, mistakes from happening, but by the same token, when it's the end of the tax year, sometimes mistakes do happen. I think there was some confusion in the assessing department because the address does in fact remain the same.
I see.
The state, however, requires with a new tax ID number that you redo the industrial development district.
Great, thank you.
Is it my understanding that, Mr. Supervisor, we're going to have it at the next meeting? We'll have another hearing, and then we can clear up this
That's
little
correct.
bit of paperwork thing and take our vote. Is that correct, sir?
Now, the last agenda, there were two agenda items on. One was removed, which would have set the second public hearing on the district at the last agenda. Hence, we'd be having two public hearings today. We're only having one. We'll have another public hearing at our next board meeting, and then the actual action items, the resolution could be acted on and to proceed forward by November 1st, which I believe is a critical date for groundbreaking.
You're right.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any further comments from the public? From the board? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Accavetti, support by Trustee Demink to close the public hearing. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Accavetti.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
The public hearing is closed at 7:44 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
See you next meeting.
Excellent.
Do it again. Moving on to item 8, the regular agenda. 8A has been postponed until our next board meeting pursuant to the addendum to the consent agenda. Moving on to item 8B, approve a request by the Senior Center to authorize the supervisor to execute the 2019 SMART contracts and adopt Resolution 2018-17. I do believe we have representatives from SMART and Richmond Lennox EMS here for any questions. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Accavetti, support by Trustee Anderson. Discussion. I think the contract and the agenda item is pretty thorough and self-explanatory. Any comments from the public? Motion by Supervisor Accavetti, support by Trustee Anderson. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Accavetti.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails.
Mr. Supervisor, I just, I didn't know when the appropriate time was to chime in if there was a need at all. I think Mrs. Rose did a good job. She spoke to me quite a bit about what she was putting in front of you, so I'm very aware of that. I thought the board might like to be aware that last year in Chesterfield Township alone, we provided 5,162 rides on the small buses, and again, our contract for the last few years has been right about the $60,000 or upper $50,000 mark. So we're certainly pleased to be able to continue providing that service to your community, and I think oftentimes with the seniors and disabled, the most vulnerable residents that we have in all of our communities. I just want to mention one thing that is kind of a bit off script tonight, and that is you folks are so terribly fortunate here in Chesterfield Township, and I think we need to always remember the good things. I had the absolute privilege about a week ago or so to work with your new public safety director, who I've known for many years, your firefighters, and members of your ambulance service that's provided by MedStar Ambulance when a small nursing care facility needed to be evacuated and folks moved to another facility within your community due to a little fire situation. Thankfully, there were no injuries, but 37 of the 39 residents that we moved were wheelchair bound. And so it's a significant amount of work and coordination to not only move them, but move their medications, their oxygen, everything they need literally to survive day to day from one facility to another. And I will tell you, your public safety folks under the leadership of Director Kirsten just did a phenomenal job. And so from one public safety director in a neighboring community to this board, you are tremendously fortunate to have a man like that working for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I kind of broke protocol there because you missed the opportunity to come up and publicly during public comments. 8C, approve a request by the Public Safety Department to make 2 conditional offers of employment to 2 firefighter applicants.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee DeMink.
Support.
Support by Trustee Anderson. Director Kirsten.
These are requests to replace 2 vacant positions within the fire department. We've done extensive backgrounds on these 2 individuals. I'll bring them forward for introduction to the board at a future date. They've got 2 final tests that they have to complete before I request that I present them to you as full-time employees.
Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Motion by Trustee DeMink, support by Trustee Anderson. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Item number 9 is the addendum. There is an addendum pursuant to the revised consent agenda. Item 9A, to set a public hearing for October 15th, 2018 at 7 p.m. on an application for an industrial development district at parcel ID number 150904100025, submitted by Shaler Corporation located at 29933 Commerce Boulevard.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Trustee DeMink, support by Clerk Berry. Discussion. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. Motion prevails. We'll see you back next week at the next public hearing. Item number 10 is public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. And I do believe you got to put the microphone a little closer. Seem to be having a bunch of technical issues around here lately.
A lot of things I wanted to discuss, and I'll get through 5 minutes, but I'll leave this with you so that you can read it and respond or keep it in mind anyway. Some problems, some questions, some advice.
Thank you.
The first one deals with the DPW stopping the wood chipping crews next year. Just wanted everybody to know I'm one of the 90-some people that use it. I've got a number of trees on my property. 3 of them are the old probably 80 to 100 years old, and every time we get a decent wind, I drop limbs. And I don't drop little ones that I could just tie up and bundle and leave out for the waste people. So I'd like you to rethink that, maybe change it to once a month, or just accumulate a number of them, pick a day that you're going to go out and do it. I'm betting that you're not going to lay anybody off for not doing that. And I'm betting that the chipper will probably still be around, because everything that the county cleared around here in the summer or the spring is growing back in, and you're going to need your chipper if you're going to re-clear that again. The other thing was the savings. If you're looking for savings, I don't know how many times I've been over to the water department office. I don't know how big that building is. It's huge. And all I see in there is 6 people. What size is that, Don? Do you have any idea?
Joe, keep your comments addressed to the board, please.
Anyway, it's a very large building, probably 100,000 square feet, and there's 6 people in there, anytime I've gone in there. I know that everything is in the back of the other building with the trucks and everything, and I'm just thinking if you wanted to save some money, is move those people either back here or move them in with the equipment, and you can either convert that building. You're always talking about a community center. That'd be a good place to start. You're paying probably $200,000, $250,000 a year on the mortgage on that, plus who knows what the heat and light is. It's got to be a bundle. You're paying to keep those 6 people in an office. We'd already talked about the live streaming on the board meetings. The other thing I wanted to get into was evaluating the bids. When I looked at those bids, I had a problem with it because apparently AEW looked like a rock star compared to the other people. And I didn't understand why, because of our previous connection with AEW, with the water board. Essentially, when we got into it, discovered that about $500,000 a year was going to AEW for minor things they were doing for the water department. Initially, we found out they did the study that helped form the Water Rate Advisory Board. They charged probably $10,000 for that study, and nobody could get into the meat of it. They wanted, basically saying we needed a 22% increase over the next 4 or 5 years. But when it came down to checking how they came about their figures, what they used as their base, it wasn't available. That's why the Water Board was formed. And that's when we found out they were kind of nickel and diming this township for 2 years in a row. And that's where the suggestion came to bring on our own engineer and eliminate all of that. And from what I understand, it's probably down to about $20,000 a year. But you've got to get some procedures in place to keep it there. When I read about who went over the rate of these companies from the outside, I noticed Clerk Berry was on there, and if we had the film, you'd even see how she said, I don't know what was going on here, what I was doing, but these people helped me get through. You got a man sitting to your left there, Paul Lafata, who's probably got more expertise in business and engineering than anybody else combined on this ward. And it seems that you're missing out on the opportunity to use him. You're not taking his suggestions. And I think something has to be done. You got to bring your board together. You got to use your people. You've got to work together. I think at the last meeting at the end, I said, it doesn't look good the way it operates here. You've got a lot of dissension, and there shouldn't be any reason for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kadich. Any further public comment?
Rita Richards, 49932 Miller Court. I'm not at all sure I'll be able to make the next meeting, which will be my last meeting this season, because of my husband and his health issues. I'm a one-issue person. Being a volunteer at the Senior Center, I am still very much interested in having a gym addition to the Senior Center. And I know for the past 2 years you worked very hard to get the budget under control and bring some order to things. But what I would really like is for you to have some real discussion on this addition, because I know that we seniors definitely need it, and we would be using it in the morning, which means Parks and Recreation could use it in the afternoon and in the evenings. And then if the addition has the walking track, a two-story with a walking track, the community can use it in the bad weather, so, you know, so that they have always a place to go. And I just would really want you to discuss this in the coming year. And thank you for what I feel is having brought things under control.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do for Chesterfield. Any further public comments?
How you doing? Jeff Paglia, 48224 Forbes. Just a few comments. Some of you guys got my email about the garage situation, my neighbor's garage. Still dissatisfied with your decision. I've talked to the attorney, Miss Anderson. She never got all the details the second time I talked to her. I had sent her the same email. I recently haven't heard anything from her yet. I feel this Mr. DeMaster is not doing his job. His job is the Building and Zone Enforcement Administrator, which, you know, the building department is responsible to enforce the current codes adopted by the state of Michigan, which he's not doing, or did. I feel I got brushed under the rug or pushed aside. The ZBA never heard about this garage being put up. I should call it a commercial building, because it's a 1,200 square foot building going in a small backyard. And also, I don't know who made up the new ordinances, but it says 16 feet total height, but you go to another page and it's 16 feet after an acre allowed. Otherwise, it's 14 feet. Once again, Mr. DeMaster okayed it. Not happy with it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good evening. My name is Victor Carnes. I've been living in this township for about 30 years, and seen it grow. And it's turned out to be a beautiful city to be in. The thing is, though, I think we're going relaxing what we should be doing about the people in the township. They're going up and down our streets. We have no lights, or we don't have no sidewalks for the people to be on to get off the road. How many times do you arrive in the morning, it's so dark you can hardly see the people. People do not wear flashy stuff to see them, or kids riding the bikes. They don't have no flashing things on them. And we gotta start thinking about taking care of our children and the people walking up and down the streets. Like putting sidewalks in, or different things where we can help the people get off the road. Like we have on Jefferson, we got the walkway. Where they got that walkway, nobody's walking the street. They're on that walkway. Why can't we continue on that? Put it down Cotton Road, Sugar Bush, wherever we need it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from public? Last chance till October 15th. Let's bring it up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
Seem to get the honor of going first a lot these days. I'm privileged. I wanted to start my comments off by talking about something procedurally that is, bless you, the planning department, the planning commission. So when we have a project in front of us, we debate, the commissioners go back and forth. As the board liaison, I bring back to the board any details that came out of those meetings. Sometimes I don't agree with my fellow commissioners, and I mentioned this at the last planning committee meeting. My personal vote on the planning commission may be a no. I could find myself in the minority, and the commission moves forward with an approval that then comes to the full board. There was an issue that was before the Planning Commission. Some residents came forward, they were not happy. I was on the side of the residents in that particular case. I was concerned in this particular issue about a traffic matter, traffic and increased traffic at this development. It came to the board, we had a little discussion here. I was asked about the project, and I indicated that I had voted against it in committee, but that because the full board approved it, I felt it was my job to support the recommendation of the Planning Commission. In that instance, and in most instances, I think the commission decision that's reached comes to the full board intact. It should not be separated as if there are multiple voices. That opportunity is done during the deliberations of the Planning Commission. So whenever an issue that comes to the full board, regardless of my vote, and I will take forward in the affirmative for the board to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission. I do that on all issues with the exception of one. When there is such divide on the Planning Commission as to the level that it rises for a legal interpretation. So when a commission is split or there's a deliberation and there's a request for a legal opinion, I will always go with the legal opinion. It is incumbent on us to not spend taxpayer monies unnecessarily in court. And if we are headed to court on a Planning Commission issue, I think it is critical then to take the advice of the attorney that we pay to represent us. So in all issues arising out of the Planning Commission, I will vote with the Planning Commission independent of my personal feelings, on the exception of the cases that involve a legal opinion. If we go to circuit court and we are sued, the opportunity for damages and things that could be quite costly to the taxpayers, at that point I feel much more comfortable taking a lawyer to court with me as my representative as opposed to any other vendor, whether that be an engineer, a planning consultant, or the like. I will go forward with the attorney's opinion. So in those instances would be the only deviation. With regard to some of the comments we had tonight, I appreciate Mr. Kadich, as I usually do. Every time you speak, you do a lot of research and you seem to know what it is that you're talking about. The couple of issues that you raised from the podium were also on my list today. The one in particular regarding the live streaming, I think we covered that fairly significantly in the first part of our meeting. But if you recall, the fiber optic line was what had us on hold for the better part of a year. It was the fiber optic line that was going to spin off all these great things that were to come that never came. They just never came. There was never a presentation provided to the board. There was always half-baked things, printouts from different vendors. There was never any full presentation to the board the way we would do when we are expending big amounts of money. So this idea that, well, we had the chance and we didn't is just not true. So I am hopeful that this is an equipment issue. It falls under the auspices of the supervisor's office. He's been instrumental in getting a planning and a purchasing policy together, and I'm sure that we will have the corrective action soon. The evaluation of bids and the decision to go with AEW. Anybody who spent more than 5 minutes in the Township Water and Sewer Rate Advisory Board heard about the $500,000 plus annual expenditures for outside engineering services. It was that outside engineering service that brought to the board 2 years ago a proposal to increase your water rates almost 50%. Over the course of the plan life, it would have been 50%. That's what the plan called for. An immediate 22% was what was voted on and approved. What happened? Why would we need to approve a 22% and a 50%? It was the work of Treasurer LaFata and the other Water and Sewer Rate Advisory Board members that said before we increase water rates that much, what we need to do is look at all of the expenditures that we can control, including a best practice or an efficiency study in the water department. And Supervisor Coddington was full on board. absolutely full on board, and he was very, very supportive at those meetings, even though they got a little hot. You can imagine, as the superintendent of DPW, what better sleep you would get with a 22% rate increase. But he put the township first, and he was part of a discussion that said, there are other things that we can look at before we lay this on the residents. Engineering was one of those things, and there were significant concerns about the billing practices and what we were paying for. And when Treasurer LaFata took office, one of the first things that he did was he proposed to the board, and it passed, a purchasing policy that required a bid for all outside vendors. We could no longer exempt things like engineering. They required a bid. What we saw over the last 2 years was a dramatic reduction in engineering fees. Dramatic reduction. It's created a lot of division on the board, though, because there's a fundamental belief that those fees need to go up. Those fees are part of the township growing. You'll hear a lot about it when you hear I assume the supervisor will bring in the not too distant future, this project in the northwest quadrant. This idea of putting in $3 million of infrastructure for a developer that's yet to be named. Because if you're not growing, you're dying, is the supervisor's position. That will come with a lot of engineering fees. So these monies for other things, like senior centers, I don't know how we afford that, but we will look at it. These things are very, very difficult to fund when you're putting $3 million into infrastructure where there's no development yet, in the hopes that it comes. But you will see the increased AEW because they are now our approved vendor. The process worked, so we've been told. The challenges that we face in the upcoming 2 years, we still have water rates that we need to square that bill away. We're constantly now adding in a direct pass-through what was designed to be a short-term fix, where we use the ready-to-serve charge as a mechanism to keep pace with the Great Lakes Water Authority. It's really not a very good system. We need to have a better explanation to our residents about our water bill. The need is still there. We still have expenditures that need to be done. That's not happening. Fire Station 2, we had a packed house here. We had hundreds of people in here, and we had a lot of discussion about what are we going to do with Fire Station 2, and what are we not going to do, and what are we going to do. And the board, to a large extent, was sort of left in the dark when the decision was made. That's a decision that's made by the day-to-day operations person. We were briefed on the decision, and we are continuing to ask for answers about where the direction is. What are we going to do? And depending on how you fix or repair or replace Fire Station 2 depends on the direction of the township. What is it that we want to do with fire, rescue, and medical? I was prepared 2 weeks ago to give you my proposal, but it didn't really have the full support of the fire department and really even members of this board. It is a collaborative effort that needs to take place for a decision that big to move forward. But when you hear all options are on the table, it really means there are no options that I'm really ready to get behind. It just means that I'll be in the constant, perpetual analysis phase, and it's been very, very frustrating to some of us on the board. The positives that we've had over the last 2 years. We heard from a neighboring public safety director that talked to us about what a gift we have and how truly blessed we are to have the first responders that we have, police, fire, and our community partners in the form of MedStar. That plan was put together in a very difficult way. It is very, very difficult for part-time trustees to work the hours that we work, to go and gather the information that was needed, and to constantly go into Treasurer LaFata's office to get help on the finances, to make meeting appointments, morning appointments with Attorney Siebert for weeks on end, starting your day at 6 o'clock, to get into his office, to go work a full day somewhere else and have him vet out the legal opinions and come back to the board. And all along the way, we heard every option is on the table. What was really going on and what continues to go on here is there's really only a handful of people that are allowed to see what the real plans are. It's quite frustrating. And we saw this last week on a national level, the divide between the Republicans and the Democrats. It played itself out in the Supreme Court justice hearings. And you see such a great deep divide in our country. And it draws along the political lines, Democrat and Republican. But what's great about this township is we don't have issues that divide us along partisan lines. We're a board of 7 Republicans in name. But what we should be working together is exactly what Mr. Kadich talked about. Procedures in place to keep us together. The practice of 1 or 2 vendors that are known to a couple of people that seem to get all the work going that way. And when the outside people don't walk in lockstep, they're marginalized and they're put off. That shouldn't happen. When a resident comes in and he calls his government to be accountable and he says, you're building the garage mahal next to me, and he comes in for months. This man came to Planning Commission a long time ago, and I referred him to our zoning liaison, Mr. Anderson. And he went to Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Anderson went to his house. Before cement was poured, before construction costs were put into place. And what do you hear? Nothing we can do. It's just a mistake. Oh well. When residents come forward after weeks and weeks of sleepless nights worrying about what chemicals are going to be sprayed on them and how it's going to impact their property, and they come to the podium and make an impassioned plea, and they're told, well, we're going to go forward, we got to satisfy this contract. There's nothing you can do on that, it's a vote. But then to go out and take the video from that and show your neighbors doesn't exist. Well, it happens, you know. Every big municipality and company has that happen. I've had the privilege of working with men that I am just in awe of. Mr. LaFata has taken over massive companies, factories that were in complete disrepair, and his job before he retired was to go in and bring that factory online, to evaluate problems, to assess risk, to assess needs, talk to the people in the trenches, to propose a corrective action plan, and then implement that plan. He's done that everywhere he's been his entire career. He's raised children that are phenomenal, as has Trustee Anderson, an established career. We come in to ask about the direction. If it's not seen as in line with the supervisor, you don't get to look at the plans anymore. You'll be told. And that's what's playing out in our board meetings. And I'm okay if my next 2 years on this board are to do nothing but bring things to your attention. I'm okay if that's what I'm reduced to. I'd much rather be a partner. But you don't manage your partners. You don't tell them what they need to know at the time, and you collaborate. You take feedback. What we've done over the last 2 years is we've grown government. There's been affirmative votes to provide the supervisor with every tool and every resource that he's brought to us. We've grown the Human Resource Department. We have a Facilities and Operations Department. We have staff in the clerk's office, exceptional staff in the clerk's office. I wonder how much we would need with them if the clerk came to work. They're not there to do her work, but that's what's happening. And if the only thing I can do is sit on the short side of a 4-3 vote every 2 weeks and call out what's happening, then that's what I'll do. But I'd much rather be a partner. And I can tell you this, I raised some of these concerns 2 weeks ago. It's dismissed, and in a very kind of callous way, you heard from the supervisor, well, I guess we see the 2020 election. I never signed up for this job worrying about what would happen with my re-election. God knows the things that I say are not consistent with a politician looking to be re-elected. They're from the heart, and it's just the way I see it. If that sells to the electorate and they want more of it, then I'll stay. If they don't, I'm okay with that too. But what I won't do is get in line with a Republican majority and just keep the, partisanship. And maybe what happens in 2020 is I look to my friends who are Democrat, Republican, Independent, that have Chesterfield first. They have great ideas. It doesn't matter to me what party you belong to. But what we have to do on some level is come together and collaborate on these things when we have challenges that come forward that are really disturbing, issues that are going on the Planning Commission that I bring to the supervisor, and we spend 10 days, and then this is a little bit inside baseball here, but 10 days, supervisor and I are back and forth through email over who I talk to, when I talk, how I'm doing damage to the township by not taking all communication through the supervisor's office. I'm not allowed to talk to individuals that come before the Planning Commission because that's inappropriate and I'm creating risk for the township. That's nonsense. What we have in the last 2 years from the supervisor's office and now his partner in the clerk's office is we have a lot of very pretty, what they call APOs. We have manuals and all kinds of things that great bureaucrats should be very, very proud of. What we lack are answers for our residents about why we're spraying their house, why they're building a big garage next to you, why we're unable to keep recorded records of our meetings. And people who are very, very, very sincere and genuine in their pursuit to do the best for the township are marginalized. It shouldn't happen. Trustee Anderson, Treasurer LaFata, and myself, we don't deserve that. We just don't deserve that. And I hope that the next 2 years is more collaboration and less sparks, but it won't stop me from bringing to light the things that I know the residents who put me here demand. It just will not stop me from doing that. And again, I'm hopeful that the thing that keeps me going are the projects that I put my shoulder into, specifically that public safety department. And what we see in our Chesterfield police is an amazing thing, and I'd like to end on a positive note. This past weekend at the North Gratiot Cruise, the Friends of Chesterfield Police had a tent, as we have since we started in 2015, selling our T-shirts and our cups, and our K-9 officers were there, and the tent was mobbed with people that want that merchandise, and they want to shake the hands of the officers and tell them what a great department we have. And the Friends volunteer list, our normal individual who handles the merchandise wasn't able to be at this event, and an email went out from our Friends of Chesterfield president, and there were too many volunteers. I don't know of a nonprofit organization that has too many volunteers show up to lend a hand, but that's what we have. And through the Friends of Chesterfield Police, we're expanding. There's a long line of people that want to get into the Citizens Academy, to the Youth Academy. Our officers are in schools talking to young people about things to keep them safe and promoting the great work that's done. And that is the truly remarkable thing about the Friends of Chesterfield Police organization. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of that group. And I think it is what makes our township great. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First thing, autumn's here, stay dry and warm. Might have some warm weather coming up down later in the month. And the final thing is, thank you, Mr. Joseph. You kind of hit everything right on the head, and I can't see any improvement in what you said, your observations. Thank you.
Trustee DeMink.
Comments from the Parks and Rec Department. Are you passionate about creating a healthy, active lifestyle? Have a love of your community? Do you have enthusiasm, radiate positivity, and have a drive that just won't quit? Then you are a perfect fit to be a member of the Chesterfield Township Parks and Rec Commission. This group volunteers their time generating ideas, promoting programs, and working with the department to ensure recreation programming in Chesterfield Township can be at its best. The advisory board meets once a month at 6:30 p.m. If you would like to join our team, then submit a letter of interest for consideration to the Township Supervisor with a copy to the Parks and Rec Department. On Friday, October 12th is the day. Mark your calendar for a howling good time at Brandenburg Boo Bash. Bring the kids in their costumes and come out for a simple, friendly Halloween party. Parade down our popular trick-or-treat street, collecting candy, and enjoy a festive walk around the park. bounce houses, games, pumpkins, refreshments, trunk or treating, photo ops, and more. Tickets must be purchased in advance. Cost is $4 for residents and $6 for non-resident children, and can be purchased at Parks and Rec Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30. Many thanks to our event sponsors and charitable contributions. Big shout out goes to Christian Financial, Growing Smiles Pediatric Dentistry, Mod Pizza, Del Taco, Make Macomb Your Home, Label Shopper, Texas Roadhouse, Lisa Siemens Dentistry, Amucci and Company, Wendy Jones and Advantage Realty, Dinesh Qualls Estate Planning, Chesterfield Fire Department, and Grace United Methodist Church. Also, sign up today for our 3-day youth basketball camp starting at the week of October 15th. Allow your child the opportunity to be trained by a coach with years of experience. Mike Henry, who will be assisted by coaches of the 7th, 8th grade Lance Cruz basketball team. This camp offers individualized instruction to work on skills and strategy for getting to the next level. Perfect for a week of physical activity or to train for the upcoming Chesterfield basketball leagues. Give it a try. Register today online at Parks and Rec. Cost is $40 for resident, $45 for non. And finally, we have the Perfect Recreational League to keep boys and girls active during the winter months. Dribbling, passing, shooting skills are developed as players are taught the rules of the game. With an emphasis on sportsmanship, our youth basketball league is ideal for all levels of play and kids 1st through 6th grade. Register now through October 31st to get into the game. Cost is $85 resident, $90 non-residents, and includes a full uniform. Officials and awards. Practices and games take place in December through March. Register at Parks and Rec Department. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Treasurer LaFawn.
I'd just like to make one more comment on these administrative procedure orders. There's rules, there's procedures. It seems like we're lacking the responsibility. Responsibility means we should manage these. If there's training required, we should train. If there's equipment involved, that equipment's the manager's responsibility. The people that use that should know whether that equipment runs properly. It should be maintained. If nobody's responsible, if I make a mistake, I need to assume that responsibility. I need to understand that I made a mistake. I need to put something in place so it doesn't happen again. Everybody makes a mistake, but you only make that mistake one time. You put something in place, it never happens again. We don't do that, I don't think. We need to put something, we need to set it in stone. There's no consequences. There's no real responsibility. Nobody's really held to the fire to make sure that they do their job every day. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We have an election coming up in 5 weeks. The close of registration for that election is Monday, October the 9th. If you have not registered, if you are not registered, but you would like to vote in the November election, you must register by Monday, October the 9th. You can do that at the clerk's office. You can do that online as well, or through the Secretary of State's branch offices, as well as several other locations. We are available here 8 to 4:30 every day to take registration applications. If you would like an absentee ballot for this upcoming election, you must submit a signed ballot application to us, absentee ballot application to us. If you are on the permanent absentee list, we will have already sent you an application for an absentee ballot, but we must receive that signed application back from you in order to issue you a ballot. If you would like an absentee ballot, again, fill out the application, sign it, submit it to our office, and we will then issue you a ballot. If you are on the permanent AV list and you've already submitted your signed application to us and you are in the first large batch that goes out, if you're on a permanent AV, that batch has gone out today. Those went out in the mail. You should be receiving them by the end of the week. If you do not receive your ballot and you are expecting to receive one by the end of this week, please call the clerk's office. You may also track your absentee ballot online by going to the Michigan Secretary of State's website. In addition to tracking your absentee ballot, you can get other valuable information about what is on your ballot. You can view your sample ballot, as well as several other very important informational pieces from the Voter Information Center, and I highly recommend that you visit that website. We do link to that website directly from the clerk's page on the Township website, so you can reach it that way as well. If you have any questions regarding the upcoming election, please feel free to contact the clerk's office. I will be presenting to you at the next board meeting a presentation on some of the things that are different about this election, namely the no straight ticket voting option. In the past, for as long as many of us can remember, we have had the option to vote a straight ticket in Michigan. We no longer have that option, and it will not appear on your ballot. So if you would like to essentially vote what would be considered a straight ticket, you must select every candidate individually in that particular party. So you can no longer select Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, and have that select all of the candidates. With one mark, you must now mark them all individually. So your ballot will look a little differently than you are used to seeing it. There are 3 sections to your ballot that I will go over in detail as well at our next board meeting. During my presentation is a 2-sided ballot. Please make sure to turn over your ballot when you receive it this week in order to vote the entire ballot. There are 3 sections. There is a partisan section, a nonpartisan section, and a proposal section that includes 3 state proposals. The change in the for the ban, the upholding of the ban of the straight ticket voting only affects your partisan section. It does not affect nonpartisan races, and it does not affect your proposal section. You may vote one or all of the sections or one or all of the races. There is no requirement to vote the entire ballot. We simply would want to make you aware that there are 2 sides to that ballot, so please make sure to turn it over if you would like to vote all of those races. In addition, if you find that you have made a mistake on your ballot prior to turning it into us, or if you would like to change any of your votes on your ballot, you are allowed to do that, but you must notify the clerk's office prior to Election Day, and we can get you a new ballot. So some people think because they've made a mistake that that's not correctable, and that's not true. You can correct an incorrect ballot, and you can, if you do change your mind later, you can retrieve your old, absentee ballot you've already submitted to us and issue a new ballot to you. So those are all the available options for you in the upcoming November general election. And we will be providing more information to you in a presentation at our next board meeting. Thank you.
We got a long way to go in Chesterfield. It's pretty hard changing a culture. It's going to be an interesting 2 years. Our next scheduled board meeting is held October 15th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Trustee Dominguez, support by
Second.
Supervisor Echeverry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are